Alright, back again on this April showery day to talk about Hardcore Henry. Man, I had quite some fun at this movie. It wasn't like edge of your seat, like cheering through stuff type fun, but I had a big smile across my face throughout a lot of it. Now, I know one thing that might deter a lot of people from watching this movie is the fact that it's shot in first-person perspective. It touts itself as being the first ever first-person action movie, and that there might be some extreme action or motion that can cause people to get queasy or suffer some motion sickness. But honestly, as someone who sometimes that is a bit of an issue, especially if it's in 3D, first off, thank goodness this isn't in 3D, because that probably would have been an issue for me. With this particular movie, it really didn't bother me so much. I thought it would be kind of an issue, this first-person perspective, and the fact that there is a lot of fast-paced action and scene transitions going on throughout it, that it would mess me up a little bit. But no, honestly, this is very well handled within the movie, very well edited too, and the action, you can make out what's going on in the action, and when it does seem a little kind of confusing and stuff like that, it does make sense for a movie like this, because it is told from this perspective, and that you're not going to catch all the little details from one point of view if the movie's just going to stay fixated in that point of view. It pisses me off a little bit more in other movies like, say, Expendables 3 or The Last Die Hard and things like that, where there is fast-paced cutting and action all over the place, or that there's violence or something like that taking place just barely off of the screen that you can't even tell what's going on, or that the lighting is messed up or anything like that. But when you're kind of observing it on the outside, it is more, aggravating, I feel. Whereas here with Hardcore Henry, the action is well done. For the most part, it is gruesome violence. It is frantic, kinetic energy throughout. It is just spectacle building on top of spectacle with regards to people either getting their heads blown clean off, or getting set on fire by a dude with a flamethrower, or falling out of a helicopter into a lake. It was kind of fun to see all this stuff, just the escalation of it all take place. It very much has been equated to being kind of like the first-person shooter or a video game. It feels like that quite a bit at times. It starts pretty much right into the action with a title sequence that's pretty awesome, showing all these very graphic but artistically and stylistically done ways in which to kill somebody. You see this knife just slowly go through someone's neck, and then out the other end, and then it just kind of pops right out. If that sequence was in 3D, that would have been stunning, because it plays like a really awesome music video in a way. And then a dude gets a brick to the head in slow motion. You see kind of the ripple effect as it goes across his hair and everything like that, and he falls out of shot. It's got surprise Tim Roth in it every once in a while in flashbacks, who just insults you. I guess he's your dad in flashbacks, but he insults Henry, calling him a pussy. That kind of comes back later on in the movie to kind of motivate him in a way. All around fun aesthetic. And this isn't a deep movie or anything like that. You're not going to be looking for any major, compelling character themes or even compelling character story arcs. But everyone seems to be having a blast in this film, and it is just pure, unadulterated, juvenalistic entertainment, but done in the best way possible. That it's not annoying, it's not kind of crass, and the gimmick of the first-person perspective doesn't wear out its welcome. I mean, if you've seen the trailers, you get the gist of what the story is, so I'm not going to waste your time with really much of the narrative. You're from the perspective of Henry, who's this cyborg, badass person, and this company is trying to reclaim him, or trying to get him to do something, kidnaps his wife, where there's a twist with that at the very end, which I'm not going to spoil. But the main villain is this weird, Tommy Wiseau meets a White Walker type of villain who is telekinetic, apparently. And he just has this unusual delivery. Like I said, it's very kind of like a zombie Tommy Wiseau, but like not humorous Tommy Wiseau. Like if Tommy Wiseau was asked to play like a straight up serial killer, this would be the performance he'd probably deliver on. But it's a well done kind of taunting villain that you meet face to face here throughout the film. And then your sidekick is Charlotte Copley from District 9 and Elysium and all those movies. And I gotta say, I loved his character Jimmy throughout this entire movie. When you first meet him, he's like, oh, well, he kind of runs up to you, he's like, oh, I'm here to help you out and everything like that. And he's like explaining what's happened to him. He's like, here, pulled out of the glove compartment to help you recharge. And like, you're like sticking, I'm acting like I'm the character with like, Henry's like sticking like cords into his chest and everything like that to show how much battery life he has left. And then in mid-sentence, Copley gets shot in the head while you're driving, and you're like, shit, he's only been on screen for like 2 minutes. Is that all I'm going to see of Charlton? Well, don't you worry, because he keeps coming back again and again and again as all these different characters. He comes back as a homeless dude with his full-on beard and heavy like shades and a do-rag. He comes back as a hippie who's like there just blowing ganja smoke in your face in the woods. He comes back as this strung out high on cocaine dude with a fro in this bordello. And throughout the entire action sequence, he's like right behind you with twin AK-47s or pistols in his underwear, just like leaping over the bar with Henry and just emptying clip after clip into bad guys. Like, he plays a whole plethora of characters throughout this movie, and it is kind of hilarious. First off, just because every time he pops up on screen, and at first I kind of wonder if this would be something that I'd find annoying, but it really didn't get old. Every time he pops up on screen, you kind of anticipate that whatever iteration of the Copley character shows up, whatever iteration of Jimmy shows up, he's going to die some horrific way. And sure enough, like eventually at some point, each iteration of Jimmy ends up biting it in some hilarious way, except for the very end where it is kind of touching in a way that is a little kind of emotional when he finally kicks it finally. Sorry, spoilers there, but this movie is pure unadulterated batshit, but it is enjoying every second of it, and that's fine by me. I've always said I love just crazy frantic movies. They don't have to have like deep insightful themes all the time, and this one doesn't, and it has fun. It definitely is just kind of a roller coaster ride, and you aren't waiting to get off of it. In fact, the only time I checked my phone for the time in this movie was not because I was bored, but because we were coming up to the end, and I seriously thought only about 45 minutes had gone by, because this thing, it gets into the action within the first 4 or 5 minutes of the movie, and it does not let up. I mean, you'll change to different scenarios and to different scenes, but the action keeps going, and at no point does it feel like it's relentlessly, throwing stuff at you. Like all these scenes play very well and are very done in a very exciting style that you don't care that there's one big set piece building off of the next one. And by the time it got to the end, I really didn't think that much time had gone by, but sure enough, my hour and a half had already come and gone, and I was like, wow, this was a quick sit. It was a fun quick sit, at least. The spectacle upon spectacle. There's a point where Copley is when it does have kind of quieter moments, you're still engaged. Like you're not like, okay, here comes the big exposition dump. I can switch off my brain now, because there is exposition at times as to what's going on, but as soon as he'll get through like a bit of dialogue, Copley's character Jimmy will all of a sudden go into a music montage of "I've Got You Under My Skin," while all these different versions of him keep popping in and out of the scene. And added, like, one sings one verse and then drops to the floor. Another one shows up out of nowhere, sings another verse, and then drops to the floor. Another one dressed up in camouflage ghillies and things like that bursts through a curtain and starts singing in a tough as nails, like, Cockney accent. I've got you under my skin, and then just drops to the floor. It's just crazy visual and acting shit like that I'm just like, this is amazing. Is it going to be a Best Picture contender? No, of course not. But you know what? It's funny. It's fun. I enjoy the performances in this film quite a bit. I didn't need to have like a detailed backstory for Henry or for his wife or for the main villain Aiken or for Jimmy that much, even though they do provide a little bit background here and there to enjoy these performances. Like, everyone is going for broke in this movie, and it's great. And again, that video game aesthetic really plays fast and loose with the narrative, and that there isn't a lot of quiet downtime in the film, but at the same time there are less frantic moments. Again, keeps the film clipping along very well, like you are playing in a video game, and you're okay. It's a little bit of a cutscene here, but we're getting ready to gear up for the next level and so forth. And there are times where a little bit of frustration would get into me, but not frustration about the movie itself, but the kind of frustration I would feel towards a first-person shooter that is giving me a hell of a time. That good kind of competitive frustration in a way. Like the very end of this movie, just a straight-up free-for-all on top of this company's rooftop between Henry and what looks to be like 100 to 150 super cyborg soldiers going from person to person, like just dealing out punches and shooting up people left and right. And it seems almost relentless. Like at any point I'm like, oh man, this is gonna kill me and we're gonna have to restart this scene all over again. But then to further add to it is that he's always trying to reach Aiken, the bad guy, who's on top of like a helipad. But every time he gets close, Aiken uses his telekinesis to like catch him in midair and chuck him like halfway across the roof. And it gets to the point where you're feeling like that rage quit type of vibe almost in your gut, where you're like, God damn, final boss. Like I had that feeling of like, this dude is frustrating, but the good kind of frustrating. It is kind of that fun little treat for you, especially if you do enjoy those types of games. Effects wise, it is pretty well done. Like, you can tell when certain shots are CG. It doesn't really take you out of it. I think also because of the fact that if you do go in it with that kind of first-person shooter mindset, it won't be distracting in that sense. But a lot of the practical effects are really kind of cool in this. There's a point where one of a recurring kind of plot is that Henry is essentially running on some kind of battery or power source within him, and that he needs to either get a fresh one or needs to kind of recharge his in order to keep going. And towards the end, he gets into a fight with this huge cyborg soldier person and straight up ends up like just ending him by throwing his head against the floor repeatedly until the dude's like head just cracks open, I guess. And then he just dives into the dude's chest cavity, rips open his rib cage and grabs his battery, rips open his own rib cage, and you can kind of see it down here, and then he just sticks the new one in there. No, it doesn't look like that was CGI at all. Like, it looked like really convincing practical effects that I'm like, oh man, ow! Oh, it made ripping into people's rib cages look really easy. The only thing I can think of that would kind of steer people away from this would be the motion sickness thing. So if you're easily susceptible to this, I understand why you wouldn't want to see it on a big screen. If you'd want to wait for it to see it, you know, more in the home theater setting, that'd be fine. But I recommend that you check out this movie at some time. If you're a fan of like just fun, hilariously like exaggerated reality action, then this one would be for you, definitely. Every time, every explosion that sends this guy flying, you kind of feel like it's almost like I'm flying. And some of the just scene transitions are hilarious too. After he's thrown from a helicopter, he's immediately trying to get to a rendezvous point and tries to jump on a horse that just happens to be there, and it starts playing like Aaron Copland Appalachia music to go along with it, and the horse immediately like bucks you off of it and just gallops away. Stuff like that just kind of brought like a chuckle to me and made me smile here or there. With regards to a plot, it's a really easy plot to follow, but it doesn't make it overly dumb. It's just a stupid action movie, but it's got good qualities about it and kind of a little bit of its self-aware wink and a nod that really make it entertaining. I don't want to say much more about that. I'm really trying to remember some of the trailers that I saw with this one. I think next week is Criminal, so I got a trailer for that one. The Kevin Costner steals Ryan Reynolds' memories or something like that. Some horror movies that I'm ashamed to say came from James Wan, but they weren't directed by him, so they don't look as good as one of his movies. There was a funny Fathom Events advert I saw in the pre-screening thing that showed up, and it started off saying like, we've had all these scares before, and it was saying like Y2K or, you know, conspiracy theory type stuff, and now for today's modern Y2K or today's modern conspiracy, and it immediately shows a polar bear and a glacier, and I'm like, oh god, this is gonna be a conservative climate change is not real movie, isn't it? And sure enough, it says Climate Hustle with special event speaker Sarah Palin. That's your big selling point for that, huh? Alright, I am ready to listen to this well thought out and totally not just crazy word salad of a movie. I wholeheartedly recommend Hardcore Henry. Check it out. Have a blast with it. I'll see you guys next time.